Welcome to HeartMind-ify. Before we start the show, just a reminder to share, rate, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. And please give us a 5-star rating. It helps us beat the big tech algorithms.
I'm John Izzy. Change can be difficult for a lot of us, but when we understand what makes us tick, we develop a better understanding of who we are and begin a journey of discovering our best self. Join me for a free session at johnizzy.com.
And I'm Kim Cordy, creator of the Emotion Chef Framework, an emotion management tool. Thoughts drive emotions, and emotions drive thoughts, but it's our emotions that drive our decisions and behaviors. Find out more at kimcordy.com.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Knowing each other personally and socially for the past 10 years, Kim and John have joined forces, bringing years of experience and training, providing a platform for growth and personal development, along with a little humor. John is the heart, Kim is the mind, and together they are HeartMind-ify. Kim, can you believe it? It's going to be our 20th episode this weekend. I'm stunned.
If you add how many did we do on Instagram?
We did at least, 15, 10. 20 of those? 10 of those, maybe? Yeah, 10 of those.
Let's go with 10. It's our 30th anniversary together, but this podcast is 20. Isn't that crazy?
I love it.
I know.
I absolutely love it.
It feels like it's been so much longer than that, but probably it's because we've worked together and we talk pretty much every day. So every day's a podcast for us.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, though, that's 20 weeks that we've been doing these podcasts, 20 weeks in a row, because we go every week. So that's 20 weeks. So that's a significant amount of time.
That's very significant.
I think it's exciting, though. I'm happy with what we're doing. And I think, our listeners, the comment, are happy with what we're saying and what we're talking about. So, let's keep going and make it another 20.
I'm up for it, John. Let's do it.
Sounds good. So we're going to kick our 20th episode off with All About Kim.
Yes, all about Kim. And I have to tell you, John, right now, I am not covered in grape juice, but I have a lot of grape juice on me. I spent almost the whole day either picking grapes or de-stemming. And we had this really long table because we had to be socially distant. It's family vines, and don't get excited. It's not like huge, but it was so funny because my husband and I were at the end of the table and we had this big bucket and we've got like grapes, all like just bunches of them. And you literally have to de-stem them. And he's just kind of going down and there's juice flying. I've got juice all over my hair, all over my face. And I'm like, we have lost a bottle of wine from how you're doing this. So stop it now.
So you don't have a machine that de-stems. You do this by hand.
We are the machine. One year we did because we had an amazing amount of grapes. And we thought we didn't have as much, but as we were harvesting, it was like, there's more here than we realized. I was de-stemming for probably 4 hours.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
And I left them, they were hand pressing. So we're making rosé wine this year.
Nice.
And instead of having it sit in the skins for a month, we let it sit for like an hour and we checked the color. Immediately, the color was just beautiful. So it's going to make a nice, pretty rosé. Pretty, it's a pretty color. And they're pressing. And I was helping to press there for a while. And it's literally one of those presses like where it's just cranking down on those grapes.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait for Thanksgiving because, and I'm going to probably destroy this word, but you help me out here. I can't wait for Thanksgiving because I always buy a Beaujolais
Beaujolais.
Beaujolais, I'm
That's it.
right?
Uh-huh.
Wow, that's amazing that I actually got it right.
I thought you were going to say
And
something like a Gewürztraminer.
no, but I always buy a Beaujolais and they're
Gamay
delicious.
Beaujolais.
And they're fun, and they're so different. Like every year it's a different harvest, but I thought I heard that it was a very quick harvest. Like they do the grapes and make the wine and it's real quick. But I don't know if that's true.
You know what? My husband, his sister, and her husband, who's a chemist, they worked this out. I'm one of the grunts,
You
and
just do the grunt labor. I love it.
I do the grunt labor, and I consume,
There you
and that's
go.
it. I've learned a lot though from being married to Andrew. I've learned a lot. He's a sommelier, but we're not here to talk about wine. We're
No, what are
here
we
to
here to
talk
talk about?
me.
I love it.
Yes, as much as I love talking about you, it's not well, right. So I was like, "What do you want to know?" I was born. No, I'm not going to go back that far because we would be here a very, very long time. I I think that life began, and when I talk about life, I'm talking about the life I'm leading right now and my quest to help people. And people talk about emotional intelligence all the time, but I talk about emotion management. To me, if you can understand and try to manage your emotions, you're so much better off. And I'm sure it is an aspect of emotional intelligence, but I'm super focused on the methodology. It came about because I got my heart broken. And I mean, puddle on the floor, crying, life, lost two businesses because they were with my ex-husband. And I lost what I thought at that time was the love of my life. And he had been a very important person in my life. And in a lot of ways, he will always be, just because of him. I progressed in life and I am where I am now. I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for him leaving me. So I'm grateful in that aspect. But this broken heart was devastating. As you know, John, I was a business consultant. You and I worked
Yep.
together. You were my client and then worked with me, and I implemented procure to pay systems. I would go in and design not only the system, but integrations and blah, blah, blah. I am also, which is not going to be a shock to you, a little bit of a control freak.
No, really.
See, they
I would
can't
never say that.
they can't see your shocked face, John. Yes, I don't want to have to go through this again, is what was in my mind. And I thought, okay, looking back, because for me, it was a failed project. And what do you do when a project fails? You look back and you think, okay, if I had done this or this or this different, then I'm not going to make this mistake. I shouldn't call a marriage a project, but in my brain, that was how I was operating. And I said, we were at our happiest when we had a balanced life. I was going to work, he was doing his thing, we would be together. We were the least happy when we were together too much or not enough. And I had my idea of togetherness and how much we needed, and his was a little different. I'm more independent, I needed less, and he liked me to be a part of everything and kind of take care of him. And now he has someone who loves taking care of him. So all's good there. So I came up with this Venn diagram in the shape of a heart. So in your brains, listeners, John's seen it, so he knows. In your brain, imagine two circles that are intersecting. And on one side of the circle, one circle represents you and the other circle represents your partner. And as they intersect, that's your time together. That's us time. So you can move those circles together or further apart, and you connect it all together to make a heart by putting a V at the bottom. and that represents friends and family. So the idea was how were you spending your time? And that was kind of like my first epiphany. Like I needed this to kind of help me gauge and to use it as a tool to talk to someone as to what was important to me as far as how much time I needed in the relationship, because I didn't want a clingy man.
Right.
Secondly, I realized I made some bad decisions going in. Not that he was a bad person. It's just that he wasn't the right person. I was in a bad place emotionally, and he was kind of like my white knight coming in and saving me a bit. Yeah, I felt that way a little bit. And so I knew I needed to be more focused as to what I really need, what I wanted in the relationship, what I valued. And I basically created a shopping list or a value statement or whatever you want to call for what I wanted in my next relationship, the next person. If I married whoever I was with long term, this is what I wanted. And I also knew I needed to control my thoughts. And I would tell people about this. I would be at clients and say, and they'd be talking about their relationships. I'm like, well, draw this heart and tell me what it looks like. Like, what would it look like? And it was always a fun conversation. One woman goes, my husband and I are going to get divorced because we have what I call a chubby heart, which is you don't spend any time. So the circles are way far apart. That's a chubby heart. A skinny heart's when you have no time apart and they are practically one circle, and that's a skinny heart. So she was a chubby heart. And then one day I was with a friend of mine. I can still remember he and I were having at Kukari in San Francisco. We were having a fabulous Greek dinner. It's an amazing restaurant. And he was having problems with his girlfriend. I said, here, I got a pen and a piece of, I said, here's a napkin. Here's a piece of paper, rather. Write it, because Kokari would never have paper napkins. And I said, write what your heart would be. And he's like, this is great shit. You need to write a book. So I wrote a book, and it's called The Perfect Heart, Creating and Maintaining Love-Life Balance.
And it's a great book, by the way.
It was a good book. It was a good start for me. And it just was a start because I was focused on thoughts. I was focused on emotions. I was how I feel and how they interact with each other. And it was all about understanding our minds, because I'm very logical and there's always a process and a procedure, and the brain has to have a process. If I could understand the process, then I can create the procedures, right?
Right.
You know me, right? Procedures, process.
Yep. But you did, you know what, though? But you did something that a lot of people don't do.
What is that?
You stopped in your tracks and you didn't jump into a relationship right away so that you would repeat the same situations over and over again with every new relationship. You stopped and said, all right, let's look at this intelligently. Let me dissect for myself what it is that I'm feeling. What are the things that I need in life, and get that all out and put some structure around it so that when you began looking for another mate or even a boyfriend, you were looking at a different person. You were looking at somebody that was going to benefit you and help you, as opposed to the same relationship problems over and over again. So you did something that a lot of people don't do, and I commend you for that.
Well, thanks. And I was observant. A friend of mine, he talked about how his mom, like a billion years later, was still bitter over his dad cheating on her. And I'm like, okay, don't want to be her. Tried really hard not to be bitter, because not only did I lose my husband, but I did lose 2 businesses, which was really impactful because I'd given up my business, my work, to help him and grow what I thought was our future. So it was really hard to not be bitter, but I worked on that. But it's all about, you're right. Unless you stop, you're going to keep making the same mistake and keep getting involved with the same person. And it's hard not to do. But thank you for saying that. I wanted to understand my processes and procedures. And everything changed for me when I read How Emotions Are Made: The Secret Life of the Brain by Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Such a good book. Such a
Right?
good book. Complicated, right? But such a good
Right.
book.
Well, I
Yeah.
put my ex through school. We used to read studies at dinner time. I understood a lot about the body and biomechanics and biochemistry and a lot of other things that an accountant shouldn't know. And it was fascinating to me. Plus, I had a brain health coach certification. And it was like just everything was coming together in my head. And it was from there that I created the Emotion Chef. I realized very quickly that emotions drive thoughts and thoughts drive emotions, which I had figured out before, but it was very clear it's emotions that drive decisions and behaviors. So if I wanted to change my decisions and behaviors, if I wanted to help others, that was critical. And it all just fell together, and I combined my brain health coach, the understanding of the importance of brain health, information that she had in the book about your body budget, and that we have energy as a currency that we use. We call it calories, but there's low grade energy and then there's high grade energy, and how the brain needs a particular type of energy. And it just goes on. I mean, I expanded to add in breathing. It's something that she kind of talks about, but not too much in the book. But it's about respiratory sinus arrhythmia. I researched and I found that term, and I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. Have you heard of that term, John?
Yes.
Okay, because this is important stuff. And I'll tell you why it's important, because your heart can control your brain. Like there's signals going back and forth that everyone thinks, yeah, the brain is in control. Like it's the one issuing commands, but the heart can tell the brain what to do. And when we're in a stressful situation, you always say, oh, take deep breaths, take deep breaths. Well, the reason why is because your respiratory system, your breath rate, it can slow down your heart rate. And then when the heart rate gets slowed down, it says to the brain, hey, tell the rest of the body to turn off the fight or flight response. So you're out of that high cortisol state. And that's why there's so many programs around breathing. And this is why. So if you think like that breathing is hokum or just a bunch of new age phooey,
Right.
what's another word I can use? But anyway, it isn't. It's a physiological phenomenon that is I read an article that this doctor said it's the best biological break out there and for stress. And it's true.
Well, yeah, and it's we're our body's own medicine, if that makes any sense. But my point is that we have the tools within us to calm ourselves, to focus, to make change, to better ourselves. We have all the tools. We just have to learn how to use them. And I think what you do is phenomenal on a teaching aspect, because you absolutely do teach people how to use them in practical terms. And I know you haven't mentioned this yet, but I definitely wanted to ask you to go in a little bit into the Emotion Chef and that program, because for me, that hit home in so many different ways, because we all cook, or at least we understand what foods go together and how you put a plate together, right? We all have a little basic understanding, but you take it to a different level and then bring into the emotion into that. And it's phenomenal on how to sit there and just understand how emotions are made and changing things up so that you have a better grasp of what you feel. So without giving the listeners any more information from me, why don't you tell the listeners, if you can, what that program is? Because I think it's fantastic.
Thanks. I had talked about how thoughts and emotions drive each other, but that it's emotions that drive our behaviors and our decisions. The idea of the emotion chef is that our brain, which is what launches our emotions, it's getting signals from the body, right? Emotions are a whole body experience. It's what's coming in visually. It's what you hear, sensations from your skin. It could be touching the ground. It could be sensations within the body. It's all signals. It's data to the brain, and it has to figure out what to do with that data. And to make that easier, it puts together concepts. So we learn as growing up, like we put together anything that's round and bounces is a ball. Now there's various degrees of balls, but we lump them in the concept of a ball. And then now there's sports balls, and then you start to make it more distinct, right?
Yep.
So think about that is just a concept. But when it comes to our emotions, there's a lot more information coming in. It's not just the visual. I see a round item that bounces, and so I call it a ball. Whether even if it bounces or not, it's round, so we call it a ball. Now, your brain with emotions takes in all of this data, and it's getting these sensations. So it gets these sensations, and your stomach is all twittered, and the brain has to say, is Kim hungry, or is she twitterpated because she just saw a cute guy? This was, of course, when I was single. But the point is that the brain has to use the information that it's given and the concepts in my brain in order to make a determination. And it launches that determination about 30 seconds if it's an emotion concept or a non-emotion concept, 30 seconds beforehand. Now your body then responds to that with all the concepts that are in your head. So I'd like you to think of those recipes, or concepts rather, are recipes in your head. You've got your responses historically. And I've used this before. If we were walking down a pathway in a park and we both saw a dog, and I said, "Oh, how cute. I think I'm in love." And you were like, "I'm scared. I need to run." That's because that's your recipe in your head. So this is all stuff that is not like a big shocker. But what we don't understand is how much those recipes are unknowingly making decisions for us and influencing.
Yeah.
Well, but we don't realize how much they are. So when you can learn to be more like a chef, meaning instead of being able to say, I'm afraid of all dogs, if you can distinguish that you're afraid of a particular dog, it's more distinction, right? Instead of all dogs.
Yeah.
Well, let's put this in chef terms. If I'm a master chef, if I'm Gordon Ramsay or what, I can take a sip and I can tell you what the ingredients are, if there's too much of it or not enough. And I can also, if it's a common recipe, I can tell you the name of the recipe and say, this is very much like blah, 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 blah. They're very fine-tuned. And the words that they would use to describe the food, they'll have all different kinds of words. It's not just good or bad. They would say, this is crispy, or this is charred, or this is
savory, or
spicy, or it's been sous vide. I mean, it goes way beyond like the terms that someone who's working at Denny's might use, right?
Right.
And not to say anything against Denny's. I'm just saying that it's that
Understood.
elevated level of palate. And so what I'm trying to do is help people have that with their emotions, so that you don't have just a few words. You don't just say, oh, I'm happy, I'm sad. How do you feel good? How do you feel bad? You have a much greater vocabulary. And what that does is that when you can look at a situation and know in detail your emotional responses to something or how you feel, it gives you that ability to have more concepts for the brain to fall upon. So that when this situation happens, just like with the dog, you're now just maybe afraid of German shepherds and not every dog out there, because you're able to just say German shepherds are what I don't like, which I think you get the point, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's good.
And so when you have the recipes, so many recipes in your head, because you've got right now all of these experiences lumped into good or bad. And so your brain just launches good or bad. And remember, 30 seconds before you do, but you're giving it more to choose from so that it can make a better and more accurate call. Two other things that I just want to point out is that it's also about identifying old family recipes that might not serve you anymore.
Right.
You might be responding and it's based on something that it's not really your values. It's just something that you learned. It's just how it's always been, but it isn't how it should be. In fact, someone was just telling me about how this family cut off the ends of their hams every time they cooked a Christmas dinner, and they'd always done that. And so, and an in-law said, well, a new member of the family said, well, why do you do that? Well, we always have. Well, it turns out that the grandmother who started cooking the hams, her oven was so small. She had to cut them off, right? So nobody said, hey, should we still be cutting off the ends of the ham? They just cut it to a particular size without even thinking about it. Why? Because that's our subconscious.
That's hilarious.
Which makes 95% of our decisions. So it's a funny story, but it's true. We do so much. And the other thing that I think is an issue for a lot of people is that emotions and feelings are slightly different. Emotion is, remember when I talked about those sensations in the body?
Uh-huh.
That is the emotional response. The feeling is how we label it. So a lot of times we have this response and we know we feel like you can't like understand how you feel. It's like, I don't know why I feel this way. You just feel something and you don't know why. That's because you haven't gotten good at labeling. And so this is part of the emotion chef process. There's actually a progression. You start out as a station chef, and a station chef, all they're responsible for is identifying sensations in their bodies and associating them to a circumstance and kind of training you how to identify the emotion based on what's going on around you. And then you can progress to becoming a master emotion chef. But that's kind of it in a real nutshell. Was that what you were looking for? Did I miss anything?
Oh, no, that was exactly what I was looking for. And the funny thing is about that is you were talking, and I've got to tell you this quick story. And I know we're running close to time, but I want to tell you this quick story. So a good friend of mine is a elementary school teacher. And I was over the house one night and he said, John, I've got a question for you. And, you're pretty good at observations and things like that and behaviors. I'm going to present something to you and I want you to tell me if there's anything that I can do. And I said, sure, go ahead. So he said, every time I get the red bouncy ball out for gym class. Now, this is an elementary school teacher. So, you remember those red balls. You could play kickball with them.
I do.
You play murder ball with them, right?
Oh, I never played murder ball. That's
we did, where you had people in two squares and then they would try to throw the ball, and if they caught it, you were out, and if they hit, then they were out. You never played that?
We had another name for it, and I can't remember the name, but it was never murder.
You do remember? All right, you do remember.
Yeah, I do.
The game. Okay, because this is important. So he's telling me, he said, every time we get the red balls out, some of the kids just completely freak out. And some of them just get physically not physically ill, but he can see it in their behaviors that they don't like the red ball at all. And I said, that's odd, but Will, it's probably because they remember and associate it with something bad. What do you do with the red balls? He said, well, we play murder ball. And I said, well, there you go. That's the problem. I said, you've introduced a game with them. I said, and if a group of people are always the ones that get out or get hit, every time they see the red ball, they're associating pain with that ball and a game that they don't like. And he said, well, what the heck do I do? I said, go buy yellow balls and see what the reaction is. So he went out to the store and he bought 3 green balls. And when he brought them out for the class, all the kids were fine. And nobody got upset. Nobody was uneasy. And then he just went ahead and played kickball. So he took the green balls and then played kickball so that it changed not only the sport, but he also changed the color. And they were the same exact balls. So it's the same thing with our emotions, right? It's we create those concepts of whatever they are, fear, happiness, whatever it is. And we associate that with similar concepts that happen in the future. And that's what our brain knows. So that's what our brain immediately goes to. So when you talk about the emotion recipe, I love that concept because what you're doing is you're changing up the recipe. And this happened pretty recently, probably last year at this time, and we were already going down the road with emotions with the emotion recipe. And I think I even said that to him. I said, Will, what you're doing is you're changing up the recipe.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's a great concept, it's a great class, but if people want to be able to find you online and take a class or so, how would they do that?
Emotionchef.com.
Emotion
Just do a search for Emotion Chef. Yeah.
Now, I know in our promo, we have kimcordy.com, but if they click on that, it takes them right there too, right?
Mm-hmm. It does. It's, yeah. Because, I started out and was very complicated, and now I've simplified my life and how I'm doing this. So, yeah, it's kimcordy.com.
Great.
We'll do it, and that's KORTE, but just searching on Emotion Chef, you can get there too. Yeah, I could talk about this all day because there's actually a disorder where people don't have the ability to block out all of their history. Like they can remember everything that happened on a particular day, going back 20 years. And they can remember who was there, the color of the sky, what they ate, what happened, and how they felt, like the emotion.
That's not a disorder. That's just an Italian female.
No. It's true. I'm
Italian, guys. It's all good.
I'm not. There is a condition called hyperthymesia, or also known as highly superior autobiographical memory. And it's a condition in which an individual possesses a superior autobiographical memory, meaning that they can recall the vast majority of personal experiences and events in his or her life. And the thing about it is that you remember the emotion and this situation. And that people who have this can get lost in their memories. It can be very difficult because if you have the memory, you also experience the emotion. So if it was a sad memory, you feel just as sad as you did that day.
Yeah.
And tough. But this goes to the kids with the red ball, and that red ball is going to stick with them because it's in their memory. It's in their subconscious. As long as they don't continue to use it, meaning always be obsessed about a red ball, and every time they see it, they go, oh, if they can overcome it, then the brain will start to not launch that. The connections become weakened and they replace it with something else that is stronger. That's the brain. Like I said, I could go on and on and on. It's so stinking cool.
Supposedly that is a game that they can no longer play anymore in school.
Well, good. I don't even like the name.
Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. It was a lot of fun, though. I loved it. Anyway, well, Kim, this was great. I'm sure the listeners found it fascinating
I
of what
hope.
you do and how you go about doing it, right? Because
Thank
a lot
you.
of times, if you're welcome, a lot of times if we can step away or step aside, I always picture myself as going about 3 feet in the air and looking at the situation, right? So taking myself
Yeah.
out of the situation and looking at it and trying that way to dissect it. And because if you lift yourself up, the imagery for me is I'm not in it, right? So with the way that you're doing it the same way, in the sense that you're giving people a moment to stop, pause, to think about their emotion and really kind of dissect and see, is every time this happen is a result of the same emotion? And more often than not, the answer will be no. So then you find a name for that emotion and you begin to create an emotion vocabulary that exceeds, like you were saying, sad, mad, happy, So I think it's
Good,
great.
bad.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, John.
A top
I,
five.
I, I will, I will say, my goal was to make it accessible for everyone. And when this one woman said to me, she goes, "If I can get this, anybody can." So it's not something. While it sounds highly technical,
It's not.
I don't present it technical. I may say it technically and then break it down into a relatable aspect just to make you get the point. But I want people to understand, like, this isn't just a point of view. This is coming from studies. This is coming from science. And if you think about it as a recipe, it feels a lot less scary, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It
Because
does.
a lot of people are afraid of their emotions. It's like, it's data. It's just data.
That's all it is.
So feed the right data.
That's it.
Well, thank you, John, for letting me talk today.
Absolutely. I think it's great stuff. And I think it's a great topic for our 20th episode.
20th,
So, you know
20th.
what? Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there with us week after week after week. I hope we're providing good content for everyone. And again, if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments and we'll be happy to read those and address them. Kim, thanks a lot.
Thank you, John. I hope you have a good rest of your week and weekend, even though I know I'll be talking to you in the morning.
I know, right? You do as well. All right, Kim. Bye-bye.
Bye.
New shows are available every Saturday right here on HeartMind-ify.podbean.com or wherever you listen. Kim and I would like to thank each and every one of you for allowing us to be a small part of your life. Be kind to yourself and remember, our hearts tell the story, but our mind is the conductor.